you for being here today. Thank you to those of you out in Zoom land and YouTube land. Glad you've joined us today. And if you've chosen to be in the theater, welcome. I recognize a few faces I don't know yet, so that's very exciting to me. And of course, all y'all who are back, thank you for being here today too. So September, we typically think about beginning again. And it's a holdover. So it's, like ancient, from back in the school days when school would start again back in September, right? And we'd begin the new school year. And so there's this kind of story in our heads about beginning again. Whether we're 7 or 70, it's still there because it's this, the summer's over and the playtime's over and now we're getting back in the groove again. And it's not just about work, and it's not just about accomplishments. It can be about anything that you wish to move forward. So it could be health, it could be relationships, it could be finance, it could be anything that you wish to move forward. Because each one of us has all of these different aspects of our lives that we kind of like to keep moving, right? It could even be like getting things fixed at our house, which is happening at my house. So it's anything that we wish to move forward that's part of our experience of life. And it could be about fulfilling a dream, something that's called to you for, a minute or an hour or years that you haven't quite got your act together yet. But you feel like it's coming. It's time. So it's what do we wish to move forward? How do we wish to have that experience of moving into our greater yet next to be? And all of us do it in some way. And there's nothing special about September, right? It's something we can do anytime. It's something, but it helps to have kind of this stake in the ground that says, okay, it's September, so it's time to begin again. And there's nothing magic about picking a day. It's just begin. And it's not even about doing something grand. Although if that's the thing that floats your boat, please do it. When I was thinking about this talk earlier this week, I was remembering a couple of friends of mine who did some amazing things. One of them decided, life changes and stuff happens, and all of a sudden it's like, I've always wanted to join the Peace Corps. And her kids were grown and off to college, and it's like, well, I'm kind of an empty nester, and she was divorced, and I'm kind of an empty nester now, so what do I want to do? And so at 60, she joined the Peace Corps. And she went to a little island in the South Pacific called Vanuatu and taught them small business management for 2 years. Awesome, right? And then I thought, that's a cool story. And she had a blast, by the way. It was really fun. And, there are stories from that. But then I remembered another story about another friend of mine who decided at 80 that she wanted to be a Peace Corps volunteer and teach English in Thailand. Whatever it is, whatever that thing is that says, excuse me, if you get to the end of your life and you haven't done this yet, you'll kind of be bummed. What is that for you? So this is a moment to reflect on that and see what it is that sings, what it is that speaks, what it is that calls us to step up and to become more of our, what we've known in the past. And my friend who was 60 and my friend who was over 80, it's not too late and you're not too old. You're just not. So today's talk title, when I picked it, and I never know what I'm doing, but I picked it. And so it's called Our Expanding Universe. And that's kind of a thing you know, right, if you're a science geek. And so I went looking for evidence of the fact that the universe is expanding, and I found it in a July 2022 paper presented in the Astrophysical Journal. And they reported that if you were to look at an object 3.26 million light years away, the rate of expansion of the universe would make it look like it was moving away from you at just over 163,000 miles an hour. Big whoop, but hey. What's cool about that, though, is the rate of expansion seems to be growing. The expansion is happening faster. And astrophysicists don't know why. And they think that's a little bit confusing because they think of that rate of expansion as a constant. Except it's not. Because expansion is expanding. Go figure. So even that's changing. So that's sort of a frame of reference thing there. So here's another piece of it. And that is, there was a sarcastic, kind of, sort of, ish political cartoon from 2012 that was initially created to poke fun at the United Nations. It dealt with climate change. And it was drawn by a Brazilian webcomic by the name of Loot. And you remember this cartoon even if you didn't know who built it. Probably. But the first panel showed a speaker standing up on a stage talking to the audience, and it said, "Who wants change?" And everybody in the audience raised their hand. And the second frame was, "Who wants to change?" And not only did everyone's hand drop, but people quit making eye contact. Because we're not really fans of change. We're not. We like things like they are. That's why they're like that. Because we like things to stay familiar and comfortable and safe and friendly. But if the nature of the universe is change, then is it our nature to change? Boy, that's ugly. How's that going to work? How do we, as humans, deal with change? And then there's this other weird biology thing that y'all know because I've talked about it before. Stagnation is death. I hate that. But if you think about a pond of water, of course in the desert it dries up, but not in the desert, it gets yucky and slimy and becomes unsuitable for life. So stagnation or stasis, which is the fancy word for it, is death. Change is the alternate option. So we got two choices: stagnation, which we know is comfortable but not healthy, and then growth. And humans are the only animals we know of that are not like fans of change. Everything else is just kind of okay with it. So there's a second conundrum, and it's not really a conundrum either. Do we prefer to change on our own terms or be changed? Well, that's easy. Because if we think about being driven by somebody else's desire of how we ought to be changing, well, that's never good. It's always better to choose how we're going to change, right? Right? And so we have this thing that lives in front of our eyes that says, okay, so staying exactly the same isn't exactly healthy, and being told by somebody else how I need to change is definitely not okay. My third option is to decide how I want to change. Make a grumpy face and get it over with, right? So what do we how do we choose change? The answer is reluctantly sometimes. There usually has to be something that motivates us. And whether it's a situation in your life that's just not working, or maybe it's a vision. Maybe it's some grand idea that's pulling you forward. Usually we like to be pushed. Well, actually we don't, but usually we end up being pushed because we're not willing to follow that vision, because that means we'd have to change on purpose. But after a couple of episodes of being, whacked with a 2x4, I decided that I would, speak to that infinite self and say, I'd really rather get my motivation at the level of a feather instead of a brick. And it's like, yeah, but you got to be attentive enough to notice the feather. So sometimes you get bricks and sometimes you get feathers. So how do we actually do this change thing? There are a couple of avenues, and you're going to be familiar with both of them. One of them is fake it till you make it, which is a really clever way to say pretend. Sometimes that works. And this is a practice of saying affirmations that you don't actually believe, but you say them enough until you start believing them. And then they start coming true because you start believing them. But usually we don't last that long. Usually we don't persist in saying affirmations we don't believe because we don't believe them, so why waste the words? The other choice, and this is one you'll also know from Holmes, change your thinking, change your life. This is one of the primary threads that runs through most of what he wrote and said, because we know that all change starts right here in our minds, in our view, in the way we engage with our world. And there it is, right? How do we change our minds? How do we see the world in a different way? For example, in a little book that Dr. Holmes wrote that was a compilation of articles from the Science of Mind magazine from 1956 to 1958 that was published in 1959 called It Can Happen to You. Holmes wrote about a burn on his hand. And he wrote, page 45 if you happen to own the book, I've learned what Jesus meant when he told his disciples, whatever things you desire when you pray, believe you will receive them and you will have them. Holmes continues, up until 3 years ago, my prayers had always been answered, but never would I dare to believe that God would answer my request for immediate healing. Sure, I believed that if you have the faith of a mustard seed, blah, blah, blah. But then I'd think, but why should God do this for me? And I would argue with myself, and I would waver. And there's a part of me that really gets all twisted up about this because he's speaking as though the divine were separate. And we know, he knows, he knew, he knows, we know that we live in the divine, we live as the divine lives as us, and all beings. So this separate God thing that sounds like he's talking about, it's just crappy language, right? Because we know that's not how it is. But anyway, this is what he wrote. I burned myself quite badly. So right there, standing in the kitchen, I said, and this is not my language because I don't ever talk like this, Father, excuse me, I don't know the right words. Forgive all my doubts, but I know you can do anything and heal this burn for me right now. Thank you very much. The burn healed instantly. even though it had been seared white and was quite large. That was almost 3 years ago, and since then I have experienced many other healings. I know that of myself I can do nothing, that God does it through me. And I know that He will do it for you if you ask believing. And further down the page, and I thought this was like really fabulous for him to actually put this in print. Further down the page he wrote about another time. The only failure I have ever had involved another burn on a day when I had been wallowing in self-pity. And when I asked God to heal me, I kept thinking, why should He? When I feel so guilty and ashamed. And every few minutes I'd look at my burn, and it took 3 days instead of vanishing instantly. It's like, yes, He was human. Because we do that too. Do we have enough presence in our own mind to actually believe and claim and own and embody that truth of our experience? Or is it going to take 3 days or 3 years or however long to solve whatever dilemma it is that we're looking at? The answer depends, right? It's not constant. It's not, I don't know anybody who's actually consistent from day to day, minute to minute. So what changed for Dr. Holmes between those two events? One, which probably a second-degree burn healed instantly, and one that took 3 days, and he kept looking at it, and it was still there, and he's going, wow, it's still there. Well, yeah, that's what you're saying, it's still there. What changed for him between those two things? He changed his thinking. He was able to hold that vision of that new reality, which was actually the true reality, which is different than this physical experience thing that he was having. So anytime we get hung up on those old stories, whatever they happen to be, you take your pick. We all have them. Not worthy, not good enough, not qualified. Why should He? Because I don't believe God is a He. I don't believe God bothers with gender. I think that's silly. Anytime we get caught in those stories that live in our minds and we believe them, that is the experience we must have. The divine has no choice to say, okay, not, are you sure? Not, is that your final answer? It just says, all right. And it doesn't even say, I thought you'd learn better. It just says, all right, you'll get it when you get it. Because that's what's true. We get it when we get it. And we get it to the level that we're willing to receive it. So why don't we? Why don't we have instantaneous feelings, experiences of healing? We've blocked it. We've said no, we don't want it. We don't think we can. We don't think we should. We don't think it's normal. We don't think it's possible. It makes you stop, right? Makes you stop and go, why would that be so? Why would I choose that experience? There's introspection that's worth doing. Because in each of us lies the answer to our puzzle. So, in a little pamphlet written by Dr. Frederick Bales, who was a colleague of Dr. Holmes, and this little pamphlet, I've talked about it before, it was the transcript of a Sunday talk he gave at the Fox Wilshire Theater in LA in 1949. The talk and the pamphlet were both called Mopers, Hopers, Gropers, and Dopers. He was making a, rhyming thing. But he described 4 different attitudes about changing our mind and accepting our God. Everybody hates me. I'm going to go eat worms. They don't think they can. They've decided no matter what they do, life is hard, and it's not going to give them what they want. It's a decision. People choose that, and they are allowed to choose that. Okay. Hopers. They hope it's better than that. They hope it's different than that. They hope a different reality is possible. They're not sure, but they hope it's possible. And because there's that tiny sliver of hope, sometimes good stuff happens. It slips through there. And they have that experience that gives them some good that's greater than what they had in the past. So the third group, the gropers, it's a funny word, they're hopeful, but they're not consistent. They try stuff. So they might come over here and they experiment with this for a while, but it's not instantaneous. So then they come over here and they try this, and then they try this, and maybe they'll come over here and try this, and nothing works because they don't commit. They don't like decide and get clear and hang in there long enough for anything to really manifest. They're groping their way like they're in the dark. And then the fourth group, he called them dopers. And I think that's funny because, of course, in modern language, good dope is really awesome. In my head, that's not how the word works. But that's, but the dope is really good stuff. And so his dopers, Frederick's dopers, were those who got the vision of the right stuff. And they grabbed a hold of it with both hands and their full imagination. And they rooted in the teaching. And they did their work, most of which was mental. Because we change our minds, and then because we change our thinking, then our world must change. That's the basic premise. So one particular juicy quote from Dr. Bales: humans control their moods. Their fears and doubts are merely thought forms which they have created. They don't come of their own accord. Humans can reform their thoughts to suit their view of life, and the thoughts have no choice but to obey them. Gradually, they come to a position of self-mastery through practice. Moreover, they know that the predominant character of their thought, that those are important words, the predominant character of their thought, is indicated by the kinds of things on which their minds most readily dwell. If they find themselves overmuch occupied with the ideas of defeat, unfairness, and hopelessness, this establishes their dominant pattern. And that stamps their character. A person's character is the aggregate of their thought. So that's how we change. That's how we change the game. That's how we move from where we are now, because you always have to start where you are. How we move in the direction that we choose. By choosing, by deciding, by holding fast to that new point of view. To the level that we choose to participate and engage. So I had a different piece picked out for the close until I did daily morning practice yesterday. And I read this piece from 365 Science of Mind, and it was way better than what I had before. So I'm going to read you this piece. The headline for yesterday was, "Inspiration, guidance, and wisdom belong to me." The tagline, if you will, is from the Christian Bible, the book of James, chapter 1, verse 22. Be doers of the word. And Dr. Holmes wrote, "Through divine intelligence, I become an outstanding individual. The fullness of experience is mine. I have no fear of taking the initiative. I do not limit the possibility of my future to anything that has happened in the past. I realize I exist at the standpoint of limitless opportunity for self-expression. I am a center of consciousness in life. I am myself, an individual, a person, a reality. I am one with life, one with people, and one with events. I have no fear of expressing myself. I do not seek to imitate others or live from resources of anything other than my own nature, because all wisdom, guidance, and power is mine now. I welcome the opportunity to live fully, freely, and joyfully. I accept the fullness of life this moment. I believe in myself. Within me is the source of knowledge, of inspiration, and guidance. I put myself and any cares I might have in the hands of divine intelligence within me. I release all sense of worry and anxiety." So those are our marching orders. As much as we choose, decide to embody, the gift already has been given to each one of us, and we have the opportunity to decide and then follow through on embodying and enlivening that truth. Do that best you can, and keep trying. Keep working at it. Keep participating in the creation of your life. And when you do that, you bless yourself and everyone else too. Thank you. So now I'm going to roll on into the prayer. And the way we pray around here is affirmatively, which is to say, claiming the good, acknowledging the experience that isn't necessarily what we would want, but claiming the good we desire, whatever that good happens to be. So I'll speak the words. In this moment of now, I see that supreme goodness that lives in as and through me and in as and through all beings. I know each beloved in this space and in this virtual time and space has that same opportunity, that same gift already given. I know each one already lives as the one, as themselves, and has the opportunity to experience as much of this great joy, this great life, this great love, this great harmony, power, peace, whatever it is that they choose. That opportunity already exists. The gift already has been given to each one and to all. And each one of us gets to stand up and own it. So today I stand up and own it. Today I allow and I receive and I accept and I stand firm and fast and strong in accepting this gift already given to me. And I know that same possibility, that same opportunity as already present, already available to all beings, to everyone who hears this prayer, this message, at any time, physically present or not in this room, because each one already has been given that gift of life and joy and love and power. And I celebrate this gift and the goodness that lives at the core of it, because I know all of life is God and lives as each one. Because there's no chore involved in this. It's just a gift we get to receive. I relax, allow, accept, and let it be. And so it is.